Have you ever just wondered why you're obsessed with coding while your best friend is all in on becoming a nurse? Could something like that really be written in our DNA? Well, a huge new study from Nature Genetics is digging into exactly that. Yeah, let's just start right there with that big question. What is it that pulls some of us towards building things, engineering, while others feel this deep, natural calling to teach or to heal? What's really shaping these fundamental life choices?
For the longest time, when researchers looked at education, they were mostly focused on how many years you spent in school. But this study looks at something just as important, what you actually choose to study. Because let's be real, your major can change everything, from how much money you make to the friends you have.
And there's an official term for this. It's called horizontal stratification. It's basically a fancy way of saying that two people can both have a bachelor's degree, but if one of them studied finance and the other studied fine arts, well, their lives are probably going to look pretty different down the road.
So we've always known that things like our family background, our culture, and our environment play a massive role in these decisions. That's a given. But this study asks a really bold new question. Beyond all that, what about our biology? Do our genes actually have a say in whether we pick up a textbook on physics or psychology?
To try and answer that, scientists basically launched this epic genetic detective story. And when I say epic, I mean it. We're talking about data from almost 500,000 people. That's 463,134 individuals from Finland, Norway, and the Netherlands. They took all their genetic information and matched it up with national education records. The scale here is just wow.
So the method they used is called a genome-wide association study, or GWAS for short. What is that? Well, imagine scanning the entire DNA code of all those people, looking for tiny single-letter differences. Think of them like typos. Then you ask, okay, is this specific typo more common in engineers than it is in artists? It's a huge data-driven hunt for patterns.
So after all that digging, sifting through mountains and mountains of data, what did they find? They discovered that, on average, about 7% of the differences between people in their choice of educational field can be linked back to these common genetic variants.
Now I know what you might be thinking. 7%? That doesn't sound like a lot. And you're right. The researchers are super clear about this. It's just one small piece of a much, much bigger puzzle. Genes are not destiny, but they are a signal, a clue that's definitely worth investigating.
And investigate is exactly what they did next, because that 7% number is really just the headline. The fascinating part, the real story, is what happens when you unpack it. They uncovered two huge fundamental patterns that were hiding in plain sight within all that genetic data.
Okay, so the first pattern is one you could probably guess. It's this classic split between technical fields and social fields. Think of it like this. On one side of the genetic map, you have the subjects that are all about things, engineering, math, science. And on the other, you have the fields that are all about people, education, healthcare, and welfare.
The second pattern they found is a bit different. It's a split between the practical and the abstract. This axis separates the more hands-on, get-your-hands-dirty kinds of fields, like services and agriculture, from the more theoretical, big ideas fields, like the social sciences and the humanities.
Right, so we've got these two big genetic patterns, things versus people and hands-on versus ideas. But so what? What does that actually tell us about ourselves? Well, this is where the story gets really juicy, because the researchers started connecting these genetic dots to all sorts of other parts of our lives.
Let's take that first dimension, the technical versus social one. They found that the genetic markers linked to the technical fields were also linked to being less extroverted and to having a higher childhood IQ. It's kind of wild, isn't it? It's like finding a genetic echo of that classic stereotype of the brilliant but kind of quiet engineer.
But the findings for that second dimension, the abstract one, were even more mind-blowing. A genetic leaning towards these fields was linked to what you might expect, like the personality trait of openness. But it also showed small but statistically real correlations with the genetic risk for schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. I mean, that's a connection that really shows how these deep biological currents might be shaping our lives in ways we are just barely starting to grasp.
And here's what makes this so powerful. These genetic patterns aren't just random. As the study points out, they line up almost perfectly with theories that social scientists have had for decades about why people choose certain careers. So what you have is brand new genetic evidence that's basically saying, hey, those sociologists and psychologists, they were onto something all along.
Okay, let's pull back for a second and really land on the most important takeaway from this whole thing. What does it all mean for us at the end of the day?
I really want to focus on this quote from the paper because it is absolutely crucial. They say their results reflect probabilistic influences, not genetic determinism. What that means is simple. Your genes are not your destiny. Full stop. They might give you a gentle nudge in a certain direction, but that's it. It's a suggestion, not a command.
So, think of it this way. Our biology might suggest a path, but it's our environment, our culture, our teachers, and our own choices that's what actually paves the road. Our genes are just one ingredient in the incredibly complex recipe of who we become. And that leaves us with one final, really important question. As we get better at understanding these gentle nudges from our DNA, the goal isn't to put people in boxes. The real challenge is to ask, how can we use this knowledge to build a world with better schools, better guidance, where every single one of us, no matter what our genetic lottery is, has the chance to find what we're truly passionate about and just thrive?